The roller coaster enthusiast, the entitled, the nerdy, the degenerate, the strange humans who spend an insanely large portion of their lives obsessing over rides that are literally controlled death. I am one of these rare specimens, and this is how it happened. Before I begin, I would like to thank you for clicking on this video. The support means a lot. So, a lot of coaster YouTubers have done videos on their journey to becoming an enthusiast. And mine isn't really going to be much different, to be perfectly honest, so it might not be entertaining to you. I don't know, I just wanted to do this video. Alright, I'm rambling now, so let's get straight into it. I've always been somewhat interested in roller coasters. From when I was a wee little lad, I've watched POVs of them online and would go to random amusement park websites just to see what rides they had. What a nerd. So roller coasters were always fascinating to me, no doubt. I was awed by these massive titans that towered over the heads of us small humans, soaring through hills and turns and dives and loops. There was just a slight problem though. I was absolutely terrified of roller coasters. If it was tall or fast or had a launch or spun or went upside down, I wanted nothing to do with it. When I was about 7 years old, my grandparents took me and one of my siblings to Worlds of Fun. I rode my first roller coaster, which was Cosmic Coaster, and enjoyed it a lot. You know, it may have been a basic wacky worm, but I was only 7 and thought it was great. We visited our grandparents multiple times a year, and at least once a year we would go to Worlds of Fun because they lived less than an hour away from the park. Time after time, I would go to the park planning on doing a big ride for once, only to turn away in a cowardly fashion. Then one day, when I was 10 years old, my grandfather and I were hitting some smaller family rides on our own and found ourselves at the Prowler entrance. He asked me if I wanted to ride it, and I wasn't so sure. I didn't know much about Prowler, so I got in the queue line to see what I could observe about the ride, such as if it looked too tall or too fast. Well, because of the GCI twisted drop, to my uncultured GP eyes, Prowler looked slow and mild. It helped that most of the coaster was in the woods, so the lightning fast pacing and constant hills weren't really visible to me, just the lift and twisted drop, which didn't look like much to me. So, I decided to ride it. The line was only about 10 minutes, so in no time, we were in one of the cars. Words cannot describe how terrified I was going up that slow lift hill. I don't really remember how I felt about the actual ride part of Prowler that very first time. I likely had my eyes shut or something, but I just don't remember how I felt until the ride hit the final brakes, which is where I had the thought, what just happened to me? I got off glad I had ridden the ride, but not really willing to go again because I'd had enough big boy rides for the day. But I started to get into coasters a little more after that. I would even tape pieces of paper together and draw my own mock theme parks and water parks. In 4th grade, my elementary school had a summer reading program where if you read 6 hours during the summer, which is not a lot, it was easy, you would get free tickets to Six Flags Over Texas, which is my home park, as I said in the previous video. Now, me being somewhat into coasters wanted to go, so my brother and I completed the reading, and my dad took us both and bought a ticket for himself. Now, Six Flags Over Texas doesn't have very many in-the-middle coasters. They have rides like Wile E. Coyote and Mini Mine Train, and really the only stepping stones between rides like that and the big boys are Runaway Mountain, Pandemonium, and Judge Roy Scream, all of which have their own gimmicks that made me hesitant. Runaway Mountain being in the pitch dark, well, not really anymore, but it was at the time. Pandemonium spinning, and Judge Roy being, well, I honestly don't remember why I didn't want to ride it. We rode a bunch of smaller flat rides, and for coasters we did Wile E. Coyote, Mini Mine Train, and Runaway Mine Train, all of which I somewhat enjoyed. My dad tried really hard to get us on Superman, but there was no way I was doing that. Near the middle of the day, we did find ourselves in line for Runaway Mountain, but right when we were next in line for the coaster, it broke. 1 hour wasted. Still, I went home having very much enjoyed my visit. All the while, our grandparents would take us to Worlds of Fun every year, and one year we even went to Silver Dollar City the day before. Grandparents are the best. Anyhow, the only coaster I could muster the courage to go on was Thunderation. Well, I mean, besides the kiddie coasters like the Grand Exposition Coaster and Fire in the Hole. But anyways, Thunderation, I loved it. It became my favorite coaster instantly. The next day at Worlds of Fun, I rode Prowler again, as well as Spinning Dragons and Timberwolf. I enjoyed Dragons, but found Timberwolf to be extremely rough and painful. I remember describing it as a 2-minute long car accident. Mind you, this was before the retrack. This would end up being the last time we would ever go to Worlds of Fun though, so I still have not ridden Mamba, Patriot, or Boomerang. Somewhere around this time, I don't remember exactly when, I went on my first inverting ride, not roller coaster, called the Rocco Plane at Sandy Lake Amusement Park. It was one of those Ferris wheels where you could pull a lever and make your cage flip, and my friend, despite my pleas for mercy, kept flipping our cage. I also rode the Little Dipper model they had there, but missed the Dragon Wagon credit. Oh no! Anyhow, one summer my grandparents, my family, and my cousins all took a large trip to Branson, Missouri, and one of the days we went to Silver Dollar City, so it was my second time going. I was a braver lad than I was before, so I decided to ride Powder Keg, and I added it to my list of credits. It toppled Thunderation and became my new #1. I loved it. Over the next year we made another trip to Six Flags as well as a Disney trip, but I'll get to that next. It was at Over Texas where I rode the legendary Shockwave, my first looping coaster, a huge milestone. And let me tell you, I used to think that over-the-shoulder restraints were the only safe restraints for rides that went upside down, and when I saw that Shockwave only had a seatbelt and a lap bar, I lost my mind. I was completely ready to get out of line, but was convinced to stay. And I really enjoyed it, of course. After this trip to Over Texas, I did some thinking, and I realized that I would always go into these big rides terrified, but there had yet to be a ride that I actually come off of regretting riding and scared out of my wits. It was this day that I got over my fear of tall and fast rides. Well, not completely, but mostly. I was, however, still afraid of rides that were supposedly unsafe, which I know is a pretty silly fear. Roller coasters are safer than your cars. Shortly after that, as I stated earlier, we took a huge trip to Disney World with fast passes and rooms and all, again with cousins and grandparents. I rode every roller coaster except for Rock and Roller Coaster, which had an insanely long line, and we hadn't gotten fast passes for it. I remember loving Expedition Everest and having Animal Kingdom as my favorite park of the 4. After this, I was practically a full-blown enthusiast, the dreaded word, but still had lots of missing gaps on my coaster count at my own home park. I went a whole year and a half without riding a coaster after the Disney trip, which was the most depressing time of my life. Anyhow, my next trip to Over Texas basically solidified me as an enthusiast. I knocked out every last roller coaster I had not previously done at the park, including Titan, New Texas Giant, Mr. Freeze, Joker, Batman, and Judge Roy, as well as some of their amazing flat rides. I've been to Over Texas many times since, but I've yet to hit up another new theme park, so here I sit with a mere 31 coaster credits. So that's my pretty basic story. Thank you all for watching, and means a lot.